Welcome to the sacristy of Croydon Minster, also known as the clergy vestry. It's the place in the church where we keep our vestments, our special robes, and also what we need for the Eucharist, many of the elements of the Eucharist. Pope Francis famously told the senior clergy in the Vatican that they needed to get out of their sacristies more, out amongst God's people. And the point he's making is we mustn't get bogged down in robes and ceremonies, but he knows, as we know, they are significant. The robes we wear connect us to our roots in ancient and enduring Christian practice. The robes we wear are to beautify and give dignity to worship. They're worn to express that the person wearing them doesn't do so based on their own charisma or lack of charisma, but they wear them in the name of something bigger, as icons, pointers, if you like, to Jesus Christ. Vestments are worn to denote the sacred nature of the Eucharist. So these robes are known as vestments, from the Latin vestimentum, meaning clothing or garment. Liturgical vestments have ancient origins. Writing around the 4th, 5th century, St. Jerome refers to the special clothes worn for the liturgy. And if you see the mosaics at the church in Ravenna, which date from the 6th century, you'll see vestments much as we know them today. Vestments have practical origins, and they've taken on spiritual meanings, although interpretations can vary with some of those. So let's take a look at them through the lens of how a priest prepares for the Eucharist by putting on the vestments. The first action, though, is that the priest will wash his hands in water, and there's a particular prayer of preparation that's said, "Give strength to my hands, O Lord, to wipe away all stain, so that I may be able to serve you in purity of mind and body." As we put on the vestments and use the prayers, we're reminded of the passage in the letter to the Ephesians, where St. Paul describes putting on parts of our faith as if they're protection, the helmet of salvation, the breastplate, and we dress ourselves in the articles of our faith. And as we put on these robes, the prayers we use echo that too. And the first is very much a practical item known as an amice. It's worn around the neck really to protect other robes from, frankly, sweaty necks. But there is a prayer that goes with the putting on of the amice. Lord, set the helmet of salvation upon my head to fend off all the assaults of the devil. So the next robe that goes over the top of the cassock and the amice is called an alb. That comes from the word meaning white. It's a white robe, and this is a really important one, I think, that often gets overlooked because it is the robe of baptism. When early Christians were baptised, they were baptised naked, and then a robe was put over them, a white baptismal robe, to remind them of the innocence, of their purity as newly born Christians. In a sense, we should all come to church wearing a white robe as a sign of the baptised, but it lingers on in what clergy and indeed servers wear for the Eucharist. So as I put on the alb, I say the special prayer. Purify me, O Lord, and cleanse my heart, so that washed in the blood of the Lamb, I may enjoy eternal bliss. The next thing I put on is known as a girdle, and this is simply a belt, but as you'll hear in the prayer, there's a significance to it as well. Lord, gird me about with the cincture of purity and extinguish my fleshly desires, that the virtue of continence and chastity may abide within me. Now I'm going to place on the stole. Priests wear a stole hanging down simply in front of them, a sign of their authority as a priest and teacher. Deacons wear the stole crosswise because they're the ones who serve and prepare the altar, wash feet. They don't want it hanging down. It's a crosswise. So I'm going to put on this stole now. You'll see that this is red, and of course vestments have different colours to fit different seasons and times and moods of the church. On Sunday, before I recorded this, we celebrated Pentecost, which reminds us of the coming of the Holy Spirit, and so red is the colour. So I'm going to put on the stole and use the special prayer, and you'll notice the first thing I do is kiss the stole in reverence of what I take on. I'm not kissing the piece of material, I'm reverencing that I bear the yoke of Christ. Lord, restore the stole of immortality, which I lost through the collusion of our first parents, and unworthy as I am to approach your sacred mysteries, may I yet gain eternal joy. And so customarily, we just put the girdle so that the stole is nicely sitting on me. And now I'm going to put on the final robe, known as the chasuble, from the Latin casula, meaning little house, like a little house under which I sit. And that house is the house built on rock, the house of Christ, the church. And also the chasuble might be said to represent the all-enveloping love of God. And it's the final robe I put on as I prepare to celebrate the Eucharist. Lord, you said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Grant that I may be able to wear this vestment so as to obtain your grace. Amen. So now I would say my own personal prayers of preparation and join with any servers who might be with me and fellow clergy before we prepare to make our entrance into the church.